Back in the 1980s, the five-door family hatchback was king. Everyone wanted one, and therefore that's what manufacturers provided us with. Escorts, Golfs, Astras, Rover 200s and the like were bountiful. But if you were, say, maybe a junior sales rep, and you were given one of these as your company car, but you maybe had I don't know, ideas above your station. You wanted something that said a bit more prestige than a humdrum hatchback, but you weren't quite in the position to maybe have, say, a BMW 3 Series or Mercedes-Benz 190e. You wanted a nice executive compact saloon. What did you do? Well, of course, the manufacturers obliged, because the Escort became the Orion. The Golf spun the Jetta, an Astra spun the Belmont, and if you're a Rover 200, well, you doubled your numbers and you got a Rover 400. But of course, these days, that C-sector family hatchback and then subsequently those saloons are not really what everybody wants. People now want the practicality and the sort of like the high driving position of a crossover. But let's say you need that practicality of the crossover, but you want the style of a saloon. Could such a Frankenstein car exist? Well, thanks to Citroën, it does now. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Citroën C4X. And as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get on to this week's road test review of the new Citroën C4X, it is of course that time where I ask you to make sure that you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. And then once you've done that, press the little bell button down below, because then you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. Once you watch the video, if you do enjoy it, make sure you do give it a thumbs up. And be sure to leave us some of your comments down below as well. Let us know what your thoughts are on the cars that we review and on the channel as a whole. Now, we're big fans of the Citroën EC4 at AutoEV. In fact, I actually prefer it to the Volkswagen ID.3 because I think it brought back a lot of things that I loved about the Citroën brand. Quirky styling, a massive focus on comfort, and the brand's relentless push not to conform. But the EC4 does it's not a normal kind of C-sector hatch in some respects. It does sit slightly hard. Whilst it's not a true crossover in the sense, it does give you that sort of attribute from two different classes of cars. So you've got the practicality of a normal five-door family hatchback and the slightly raised driving position of a crossover. Which then begs the question, who the EC4X is really designed for. You see, because it loses a little bit of the practicality because it doesn't have a hatch. It's a saloon, sort of. And it's got that kind of raised ride height of a crossover mini SUV. So as I say, who's it really designed to appeal to? But before we move on, let's take a quick snapshot of the car and what it's about. Well, it's based on the current EC4 platform and therefore shares a lot of commonality with more cars from the other manufacturers that shelter under the umbrella of the Stellantis group. Which means it has a 50 kilowatt-hour battery offering up to 222 miles of WLTP range, as well as a single motor drivetrain with 134 brake horsepower driving through the front wheels. It's priced from £32,000 up to around about £35,500 depending on the trim level. And it's designed to compete with cars such as the, I don't really know actually. Which means it's a bit of a misfit. Or is it? And does it just take a little bit of time to understand it and for it to justify its existence to you? Well, the only way that we're going to find that out is by putting it through the actual road test that actual car buyers are trusting when it comes to choosing their next EV. And of course, it's the AutoEV one. Well, look, we're going to start with styling because that is the big change with the EC4X over its EC4 counterpart in the range. But at the front, you wouldn't really know there's anything different. In fact, up to those B pillars, the car is pretty much identical. In fact, even the rear doors have the same panel work on them. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing because we love the style of the EC4 here at AutoEV. You've got your big, bold double chevron, obviously the Citroën logo at the front there, which then comes along and then splits into two, where you've got this double headlight arrangement. You've got your LED DRLs at the top there, and obviously and then your main beams, the Citroën LED vision lamps, which are mounted down at the bottom. Obviously, there's no kind of grille here. There's a tiny little bit here, but again, this is quite nice as well, because what you have is the kind of the chevron style of the sort of the plastic grille going like that, which is really quite nice. And then of course you've got your sensor down there for your radar guided cruise control, and then of course obviously the cooling that goes down in there. Round about your fog lamp bezels, these can be customised. These kind of coloured bezels here, they're also electric blue on this one. They don't have to be, which is quite nice. And this is the bit that I really love, which is difficult to see in a white car, especially on a sunny day like today. These lovely big kind of scallops in the bonnet. I really do like them. There's no under bonnet storage because obviously, as you know, the C4 is available with a piston engine contender as well in the market. But interestingly, the C4X isn't. So in other words, this is Citroen's only pure electric car available in the UK. There's no piston engine equivalent version of the X model. But it's the side profile where you see everything changes, as I say, aft of those B-pillars. So you still get the sort of Citroen air bumps down at the bottom, again with a kind of little sort of like scallop of blue there, which again, as you can see, is customisable, and your E-badge there to signify the fact it's electric, and these gloss black door mirrors. There's 3 trim levels, which obviously we talk about in pricing. They've all got 18-inch wheels, so they all get the 18-inch alloy wheels. Now, we move to the back. This is where things start to change, as I say. Now, Citroen call this a fastback, but it's not a hatchback at all. It's a conventional booted saloon from that point of view. It is longer. So the standard EC4 is 4,360 millimetres, whereas the length of the EC4X goes up to 4,600 millimetres. There's a small difference in height because, again, you've got the slightly extended kind of roofline over the rear passengers, but wheelbase, width, and everything else stays the same. It's quite a pleasant looking car in some respects, but it is odd. But that's Citroen, isn't it? I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, at least they're now making interesting looking cars again, and away from the blandness that we had with some of the earlier generations, such as the Zara and some of those latter C4s that we had. But yeah, it's not a conventional car, is it? And of course, as we move around the back, well, that's again where you see the kind of big change, isn't it? It doesn't have a hatchback, it's a booted saloon at the rear. Tail lights, wraparound LED tail lights that go in that same kind of arrow type of shape that you've got up at the front as well. Sits slightly proud of the bodywork. You get your big double chevron, Citroen underneath it, and then your model badging there. Nice boot release just there at the bottom of the boot, above the top of the bumper. And obviously, depending on the trim level you get, you may get the little reverse camera, which is just tucked underneath there. No rear wiper, but of course with this kind of fastback design, very few saloons do have a rear wiper in that sense. Nice big plastic rear bumper for practicality, and of course standard parking sensors. Now look, as I say, it's not really a conventional looking car. And the jury's still a little bit out for me because I do love the standard C4. And I say we're massive fans of it on the channel. But what do you think? Is this the right thing? Have Citroen gone on to something? It's not really a sort of like coupe SUV that seems to be going at the moment, because I say it's a booted saloon. It's designed to appeal to slightly different people. Would it appeal to you? As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, whilst you lose the practicality of the hatchback, you actually gain in space. The standard hatch is 380 litres, whereas this is 510 litres. The opening's not bad. I don't have my suitcases here, I'm afraid, today. The opening itself is not bad. It's quite wide, but obviously you're limited that way where you're trying to load bigger, bulkier items if you bought something from, say, oh, I don't know, a big Swedish flat pack furniture store. So just be aware of that. And there is a little bit of a drop down onto the boot floor, so you don't have the sort of the variable height boot floor that you do get in the hatchback. So lifting heavier items in and out of the boot might be a little bit of a struggle depending on your ability. But the boot itself does come down quite low to the bumper level, in fairness. Now, you do get a standard 60-40 split rear seat as well, so you can put load through into that. But obviously, when you lower those back seats down, because you don't have that variable height boot floor, there is a step up where those seats are folded. Nothing up at the front in terms of storage, because I say, remember, a C4 can be had with a piston engine, but you do get some underfloor storage for your standard charging cable as well. Rear seat space. No, it's okay actually. It's all right. The only thing I will say, you've got to have these head restraints up, because if you don't, they dig into the back of your shoulder blades. But that's the same as they are in the standard EC4 anyway. Now, Citroen are making a little bit of a play in terms of the comfort, and we'll talk a bit more about that when we drive the car, and we've discussed it a lot when we had the standard EC4 as well. But actually, this is quite a pleasant place to be. You've got plenty of knee room here. So again, for a sort of C-sector car, there's plenty of knee room here. The rear seats are reclined slightly more as well. I think it's 27 degrees more reclined that they are, so you get a more feeling of more space. And because obviously that slightly kind of elongated roofline, headroom's not bad. Now you can have it with an optional panoramic sunroof as well, which might just eke into the space a little bit. The problem here comes with if you're trying to get 3 across. Now, in terms of the rear bench, it's fine because it's a flat bench. So the centre person has got plenty of room in terms of that. It's not got sculpted seats at the side. The issue is, it's not a flat floor because, as I say, bear in mind it's based on the C4 hatchback, which is available with piston engine. So there is a transmission tunnel there. So the middle person has to contend with that. The other problem is they've mounted this rear kind of light section here, interior light. So if you're sitting in the middle and you're sitting up, I mean, I'm small, but you know, your head's maybe going to be brushing that. So it's not ideal in terms of 3 adults, maybe 3 children, or you know, if you sit at the centre one in the booster seat. Talking to children, you get ISOFIX points as well, and usual sort of like Stellantis group things that are behind these little zips. So you pull the zips up, and then as I say, you've got your ISOFIX in there, so they're hidden when you're not using them, which is quite good. Storage is all right. You've got your mat pockets on the backs of the front seats. You've got reasonable sized door bins. They're not lined though, so the things will rattle around in them. You do have a centre armrest, which has a couple of cup holders and a sort of like a slot here, I don't know, maybe for putting a mobile phone in or for a tube of Smarties or something like that. That's there. You do have, as I mentioned earlier, a little load through as well into the boot, which is quite handy. So for longer items, you know, cutting poles or fishing rods or things like that you have to get through, you do have a little bit of an extra ability to do that. And connectivity wise in the back, well, you've got 2 USB ports down in there for charging iPads or games consoles as well. So not bad. It'll just depend obviously in terms of who you're carrying in the back of the car. As I say, just 2 passengers in the rear, there's certainly plenty of legroom, and if they're not too tall, there's certainly plenty of height. It's just when you put someone in that middle bit, it's just a little bit cramped because of that transmission tunnel. But effectively, pretty good. Now up front, there is no real change from the C4 hatchback that we know and love. Which is to say, it's quite nice. I like this kind of blocky kind of look that Citroën have got on. It's this kind of, I don't want to say it's utilitarian, but it's just everything's functional, it just works. And the quality is very good. Yes, there are some kind of harder plastics up at the top. There's not really kind of touch sensitive, squidgy stuff, but it's well screwed together. So, you know, from that point of view, hats off Citroën. Your main focal point is this infotainment screen up here, which is the 10-inch display. And there's a new version of this called My Citroën Drive Plus, which is the software that's in here, and that's going to come onto the C4 hatch and I think the C5X as well that they mentioned as well. And it's just a little bit more slicker than the older version. You know, you can have up to 8 profiles in it as well, and they've kind of designed it to feature, you know, on a tablet style as well. You got obviously Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as well. And depending obviously on the model, you can also get wireless charge pad down here. Storage is good. I like the storage in the C4, it's excellent. So as well as your wireless charging pad, you get a nice kind of centre cubby in there for sort of like sunglasses and stuff. You get 2 cup holders down here or for your bottles or cans of water. You get a smaller kind of cubby centre armrest there. And then you've got all the things in front of the passenger. So you've got the iPad holder, so you can obviously option it with an iPad case, and then that can pop in there. But then it also has this kind of slide out drawer, so you know, you've got your things like your notepads like I have, they can kind of slip in there. And then you've also then got a conventional glove box as well, and it doesn't stop the fact that you've also got a big passenger airbag. So they've really utilised the space well, and it's one of the things that I really liked about the C4 right from day one, the way that there was just a thoughtfulness into things that people live with. Now Citroën are making a big play about this, that they are now sort of like saying that they want to just create product that people can use and use easily, and I think that's a great thing, because that's something just sensible. How many times are you trying to put, as I say, I carry a notepad with me kind of everywhere, so being able to put it in there out harm's way, or leaving your phone in there while you're off to the shops or something, or when your kids have got their iPad, they can just slot it in there and it's out of sight, out of mind. Brilliant, I like that. The screen's nice because it's up in your line of vision. We'll go back to this for a second. So it's up in your vision, and obviously it's touch screen as well. So everything works in terms of everything's focused around about this main kind of screen. So obviously you get navigation. All your navigation's by TomTom. There's probably better systems out there than it. Of course there are, but it works well enough and it does the thing. And of course most people now just plug in their phone and they work off Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever. But you know, it's TomTom, it's from a company that focuses on navigation systems, so it's fairly decent. You can have, obviously, you have 2D, you can have 3D, depending obviously on how you want it. You can change the orientation of it as well. It's not a massive screen up there, as I say, but it's probably just enough. You can also have the car with an optional head-up display as well, so when you're driving you get a little bit of information up on there. Moving across to the driver's binnacle, and again that's exactly as we've seen before. So you've got your state of charge, your mileage, your speed, the speed of the road that you're on, and just some little ancillary things around there. So as much information as you get from, say, the Volkswagen ID3 you get in there, and it's slightly backlit as well, and I just think the style of it is slightly nicer. The car focuses there's a big focus on the car in terms of its comfort, as we had before with the C4. So Citroen's Advanced Comfort Programme, which focuses around things like the suspension and the design of the seats. Now the seats feature this high density memory foam, and they are some of the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. At first they look quite kind of flat and unsupportive, but they're not. They do hold you in all the right ways. I'd maybe like a little bit longer squab for me, but some people may find it absolutely fine. But in terms of the actual comfort of them, they are exceptional. I cannot fault them at all. And as I say, they're way better than you get from, say, the Volkswagen. This slightly kind of small-ish 3-spoke steering wheel with the controls depending obviously on what you need to use. So volume and your Bluetooth on this side, cruise control and distance guided cruise control on this side. Nice and easy to use. It falls quite easily to hand. You do get a nice driving position in the car. It's nearly nice straight ahead, and everything, as I say, kind of falls to hand. Same with the column stocks on either side. They've, again, nice oily movement to them. They click nicely and you get this nice little soft click sound when you operate those. You've got some ancillary controls down here, so things like for opening the boot, heated steering wheel, which is an option, which is only available on the top spec model, and then obviously your door panel with your mirror and window controls. The heating and ventilation controls, I want to just mention them because these are pretty good, because you've got physical controls down here. So for temperature, for fan speed is in there, and then so you've got dual zones, so driver, passenger temperature, heated seat button there, air recirculation, screen defrost, heated rear screen, and then obviously fan speed there, and automatic climate. The only time you have to go into the screen when it comes to the actual sort of like heating and ventilation system is if you want to actually change the direction flow. That has to be done through the actual screen itself. So you go in here, and then, as I say, you pick and choose where you want. I can't get this to work now. Look at me, I'm being a bit silly here. So you have to go into here to choose where you want the actual airflow to go through. But it's not the end of the world, as I say, because things that you just stick it on auto and then just vary the temperature, and the physical controls, and they're easy to reach when you're on the move. Safety systems abound in the car: advanced driver assistance system, close obstacle detection, lane keep assist, automatic brake system, traction control, speed limit recognition, blind spot. It's all there for you as well. So a really nice cabin. I like the interior of the C4X because it follows on from the C4, which I've always really liked as well. As I say, you could maybe fault it for having some of the slightly kind of harder type of materials, but as I say, they're well screwed together. The build quality feels very, very good, and as I say, it focuses on, for me, the two things you really need to focus on. First of all is the comfort, and the second thing is just the functionality of the interior when it comes to the driver and passengers, i.e. storage, ease of use of the controls, and everything's where you expect to find it. So no real complaints from me as far as this is concerned. Now, if there's an area of disappointment in some respects with the Citroën, it's probably when it's coming to its battery, because it retains the standard 50 kilowatt hour battery that we've seen in the standard EC4. And I find that a little bit odd, because this is a brand new car, and this year some of the Stellantis products, such as the Peugeot E28 and the Vauxhall Corsa, are getting a slightly updated 51 kilowatt hour battery with better efficiency, which are going to give ranges in excess of 250 miles. The EC4X, according to WLTP's combined cycle, is 222 miles. And as we know, if we look at something like the EV database, it's suggesting a real world range, a combined in mild weather, of about 190. So in colder weather, it could be around about 150 to 160. So it's not brilliant. The other downside for me is its charging speed, because it's pegged at 100 kilowatts. Now, that still means you can still do the 10 to 80% benchmark in 30 minutes from one of those chargers. But in the day and age where we're seeing cars even with 150 kilowatts and we're thinking, it should maybe be a bit better than that, it is a bit of a disappointment. That being said, the benefit of that smaller battery means that if you're charging from your 7 kilowatt wall box at home, then you're going from flat to full in well under 8 hours. Now, there's no massive changes when it comes to the drive of the EC4X over the standard hatchback. In other words, you're left with a single motor mounted at the front wheels, which is producing 136 brake horsepower, meaning a 0 to 60 time of 10 seconds. So it's fair to say this is not a sports car. This is not a sporty Citroën. But to think about it like that would be missing the point of the car, because it focuses, like Citroëns do, on comfort, and that's where the C4X absolutely trounces anything else in this class, if you can imagine what class this actually fits into, that is. What basically you have, and allow me to get a little bit geeky here, so forgive me on this, but this is part of Citroën's advanced comfort program. So as well as the seats, which have, as I say, the high density foam, the memory foam in them, the way it's positioned, the way that they've kind of analysed how people sit, and the way the body, the anatomy works, it's all positioned in the kind of right place to give you enough support where you need it. So believe it or not, although there doesn't look to be sort of like a huge amount of shoulder support here, the top of your back, round about your shoulders, sits neatly into the seat. And it's the same with your sides. The seats may look very flat, but trust me, when you sit in it, it's not. It really holds you right in position. So that's the first thing about the sort of like the comfort program that's worth mentioning. And as well as that, you've got a great range of driving adjustment, you know, in terms of the seat height. You've got lumbar, the steering wheel adjusts for reach and rake as well, so that's all good. And as I said to you earlier, the way that the controls work, the functionality of the controls, everything kind of falls neatly to hand. Like those heating and ventilation controls being sort of like physical knobs, they fall to hand without you really taking your eye off the road, and you soon learn that, oh right, that's my temperature, that's my fan speed, and that's the button for that. So the physical buttons are very good. The suspension is the other part of that, the chassis of the car. Now, this uses a thing called hydraulic cushions. It's not the same as Citroën's hydropneumatic suspension of yore. So don't think of it like that. You're not going to have to start thinking about leaking LHM fluid all over your garage floor. It won't do that. It is a conventional spring and damper unit to a point. But what you then have is at the top and the bottom of that damper unit is a hydraulic cushion. Now in most cars, what happens is when you go through either a compression, so in other words, you hit a bump and the damper and the spring compresses, it hits what's called a bump stop, and that's the jolt that you feel through the car. So as soon as it hits that bump stop, it comes to a sudden stop. That's it. You get the jolt through it. The hydraulic cushion actually then comes into play at that point, because then it compresses. So it's almost a bit like a second damper in some respects that compresses down. So you don't get that jolt. That shock wave is then dissipated through that hydraulic cushion. It then works on the opposite way as well. It works when you get, sorry, there's just a pickup coming down there. I've got to squeeze past them. It then works when you get a full decompression. So in other words, when the wheel drops into a hole or over a speed bump and it then drops, when the wheel reaches the end, or sorry, the damper reaches the end of its travel, again you get that sudden stop, and again that's the jolt you feel. but there's a hydraulic cushion there, which then takes it even further, which allows that shockwave to dissipate. It's a really simple thing in some respects, but the trade for it is a suspension system that is by far the most comfortable you will find at this price point of car, without going into a really crazy world of adaptive dampers and stuff like that. It is a sensationally comfortable car, this. It's wonderful. There is a payoff for that, however, and that's when you get the body roll. So it does tend to roll when you go through the corners. But you know what? What would you rather have? Let's bear in mind what this car actually is. And as I say, it's not a sports car. It is designed to be a four-door family car. So, that was my big beef. If everyone remembers, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know that my biggest beef with a Tesla Model Y, which is designed to be a family car, is it's just so bloody uncomfortable. This is the other end of the scale. This is blissful. You could run over, you could run over a washboard in this car. You'd never know it was there. You would never know it was there. And that, to me, shows a real understanding of what a customer wants in this marketplace. And as I say, it's a comfortable family car. What more can I say? Well, I will say a little bit more. As I say, the body roll's there. You can feel it. You pitch the car into a bend and you do tend to roll around, which is all right. It just means that you don't want to start pushing the car too hard beyond its limits, in fairness. And that's the other thing. The steering is a little bit vague, if I'm honest with you. I mean, I can move the wheel quite a bit and not a lot of communication comes through it. The wheel moves quite a lot for the actual movement you're getting at the front wheels. So there is a bit of vagueness there. And the other thing is, my old bugbear with all the Stellantis group cars is the brakes. They just feel a bit spongy. You push the pedal and actually nothing really happens. Nothing happens. You push it a bit more and oh, there it stops. There isn't really a nice progression with that brake pedal. There never has been with these Stellantis group cars. Whether it's the Peugeot, the Vauxhall, the Citroën, it doesn't matter. There's never been that nice kind of smooth progression from pedal, 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 oh, and then the brakes work. There we go. So that's really about it in terms of the chassis dynamics. Its real focus here is comfort, and it does it really, really well. It does it so well, and as I say, it's a real credit to Citroën that they understand what their customers want. I mean, okay, they've come up with a bit of a wacky kind of body style for the car, but they know what the customers are looking for. You know why you buy a Citroën. You want it because it's comfortable, and it does. As I say, the other bits and pieces on the interior of the car is exactly as you expect to find it. So, as I say, everything falls nice and easy to hand. That screen, as I say, it isn't the fanciest screen in the world, but actually, you know what? It works, and it works really, really well. It's nice and clear. It's up in your line of sight. I like that as well. The fact it's not down here. It's right up there, so you can see it. This particular car I'm in doesn't have a heads-up display, he says. Before I say, oh, hang on a minute. No, it does. I was going to say, yeah, this is a Shine Plus. It should have the head-up display. Absolutely fantastic. So I get a nice little head-up display as well, which is quite nice. So I get my speed on there, and again, nice in your line of sight, easy to use, and you can adjust the angle of that screen as well, which is good. So I do like that. And it's quiet. That's the other thing about it. It's actually quite a quiet car. It's a very refined car. I'm trying to think, is it more refined than the C4 hatch? It probably is a little bit, because you've got a bit more kind of solidity at the back, so there's probably less bits for the outside noise to get in. So I would say yes, it is a little bit quieter than that. But I like this. I do. But would I have it over a C4 hatchback? Because that's the question, isn't it? Would you actually have one over a standard C4 hatch? Because its price parity is, so I suppose it is going to come down to the style of the car, whether you like this sort of style or not. And I think think I'd buy the hatchback. Because everything else that's good about this is available in that. Because I say it's exactly the same car in terms of that. I am a little surprised. The one thing I will say, sorry, I do tend to waffle at this point, so apologies for that. The one thing I will say is I am a little surprised that for a new product, that this doesn't have the new updated battery pack and motor that's coming with the Peugeot and some of the Vauxhall. So the Peugeot E2A is getting a more powerful motor. So it's going from this 136 brake horsepower to a 150 brake horsepower motor. It's also getting a slightly bigger battery. It's only an extra, I think it's 1 point something kilowatt hours. But again, it has a better range. It has a slightly better range. So I am a little bit surprised that Citroën don't seem to be adopting that, especially on a brand new product, which the C4X, which is, as I've said, an EV only car. They're not doing a piston engine version of this. This is only available as an EV. So why would you not give it your latest EV architecture? It's a bit odd. There we go. A couple other things that are worthy of a mention, which are fairly standard, that you'd expect. They were on the C4 when we test drove that, so there's no difference here, but I'll quickly flick through them as well. I was mentioning the brakes earlier about the, sort of like the pedal feels not great. You do have one level of brake regen, which is again fairly kind of standard fare across these Stellantis group cars. So you've got your little toggle gear selector down here, park, reverse, neutral and drive, as you'd expect, but then there's a further button here that's B mode, and that's your brake regen. Now it's not one pedal driving, it's not too aggressive, but certainly for roundabout town, you come through these kind of little villages like I'm in today, you flick that on, it's just nice, it just kind of slows the car up for a corner, or if you're in town, and it's quite good because it just harvests that little bit of energy back. So you can have that, and you just flick it back off if you don't want it, so you're on motorway or a more open air road, that's fine. So that was a really bumpy section there. That was on real potholes there, and the car just glided across it like this. What was I also going to talk about? The drive modes. Well, again, standard stuff. You've got Sport, which gives you a slightly sharper throttle response, a bit more access to that power, or relative lack of. And then you go back to normal. Which is the kind of standard default setting, and you do feel there is a difference. I think it's one of those things. There are some cars when they have these kind of sport modes. This is a really pockmarked road. That was really heavily pockmarked. I'm just looking at the car behind me. It's bouncing all over the place. This is coping admirably well. Yeah, so as I say, you do get a decent amount of difference between normal and sport. There's a much sharper throttle response, but it doesn't make the car, it doesn't turn it into like a GTI or anything like that. And your last one's eco, and that limits your power and torque as well, so you can get the last of your kind of mileage absolutely out of the car. So standard fare as far as that's concerned. If you've been driving any other the kind of Stellantis EV products over the last couple of years, this will be familiar to you in terms of its drivetrain, its running gear, and the way that it operates, so that's absolutely fine. I do want to mention the safety systems as well, because with things like the lane keep assist, which I've never been a big fan of, I don't really like them, but I get that some people do, so that's why I will talk about them. What this is like, again, it's like a few of the cars I've been driving lately where the lane keep assist is not aggressive. It is just that little gentle, you don't get a sharp tug back of the wheel and a big noise coming at you. It's just that little tug of the wheel you can feel, as I say. It always reminded me of my dad when I was learning to drive, my late father. When I was learning to drive and you were wandering a bit too far, he'd just tug the wheel just slightly and bring you back in line from the passenger seat. That's what it feels like. Just makes me think of my dad, the way he used to do that, and that's how it feels. So it's not aggressive. Again, it doesn't seem to be taking over you, it's still making you drive the car as such. So all in all, it's a very easy car to get on with, it's a very easy car to live with. Just don't expect it to be sort of like the last word in sort of like handling and performance, because it's not. And whilst I'm not, as I say, I don't think it should be some big Citroën GTI, It would have been nice to see a little bit more power out of the car, but there we go. Now, prices for the EC4X are going to start at $31,995 for the Sense model, and they're pretty much going to mirror prices. They're on a parity with the C4 hatch as well, so that's quite a good thing, I think. So the Sense model kicks the range off, and you get things like, as I say, the 18-inch alloy wheels, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you know, the advanced comfort program pack, and a lot of the safety equipment that we've already mentioned. You then move up to the Shine model at $34,495, and that adds on things like the new infotainment system. You get a head-up display, you get heated steering wheel as well, and then you go to this, which is the Shine Plus at $35,495, and that adds on things like the Alcantara seat trim and a few other little bits and pieces on the inside. So as I say, you know, further down the range, it actually isn't a bad value for money car, in fairness. And as I say, it's priced on a parity with the C4 hatch. You do get a choice of your body styles depending, obviously, on what you prefer. Well, in terms of competition, who knows, really, if I'm being honest with you. I suppose it's priced and it's sort of based on a C-sector hatchback, so that's going to be maybe some of its competition, isn't it? You know, Volkswagen ID3, Cupra Born, MG4, maybe cars like that. Obviously, Citroen's own EC4. But you might see it also competing with some of those crossovers as well. So Peugeot E2008, the Mocha E, the new BYD Atto 3 that we tried the other week, that could maybe be a consideration with it. The one car it sort of does remind me of a little bit, which isn't actually an EV, is Renault's Arcana, which is one of those kind of coupe-like SUVs. That's the kind of one car that, looking at this, it kind of sort of reminds me of. But it doesn't really conform to any particular class. And I think that's a little bit of a good thing. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Citroën EC4X. We like its interior design, comfort and functionality. It's reasonably roomy. It's a comfortable drive. And it offers some reasonable value for money in the marketplace. We don't like, well, the steering's a little bit vague, the low charging speed and the smallish range. The performance is only average, and the jury is still out on its design. So, the Citroën EC4X, bit of an odd car. But don't confuse that with being a bad one, because it's not. In fact, actually, it's a very good car, because it takes all the attributes that we love about the regular EC4 hatchback and just puts it into a slightly different style for maybe people who want to, I don't know, maybe stand out a little bit more. It's comfortable, it's well equipped, it offers relatively decent value for money, and whilst £31,000 to £35,000 isn't exactly cheap, it's not bad value when you think about a large family saloon car that offers the level of equipment and the comfort that this car does. So maybe it's about looks then, maybe it's about that, maybe it's one of those kind of coupe-like SUVs. Well, I don't really think it's that either, if I'm honest with you. And if I'm being blunt about it, I think I'd maybe rather they had done something like offer an estate version, you know, like they used to with the old GS, the GSA, the BX, the ZX, you know, and the Zara. I wish they'd maybe done an estate car version of it. Maybe that would have been a bit more Citroën. But to try and make sense of this is a bit pointless. A bit like the EC4X in some respects, but then people bought Vauxhall Belmonts and Ford Orion, so I'm not really one to judge. If you like it, you'll want it and you'll buy it. For the rest of us, well, they do make the EC4 hatchback, which is probably the one that I would choose. Thank you for watching yet another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure you are subscribed to the channel and press the little bell button that's down below, because then that way you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure you do give it a thumbs up, and by all means, please do leave us your comments in the section down below. Let us know your thoughts on the new Citroën EC4X. Am I absolutely losing my mind? Is it a stunning looking thing, or is it something you would be interested in? Well, by all means, do let us know. Now remember, we're across all social media as well, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok even now. So give us a follow there, because every little bit helps. And as always, please remember, if you've not had enough of this and you want to see even more road test reviews of all the latest electric offerings to the UK market, then stick on our YouTube channel, because there's well over 120 odd videos now. Not just road test reviews, but electric icons, van reviews, motor right reviews by Charlie Berman, and even some old classics that have been converted. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching and supporting AutoEV. I'll see you again soon.